We left off on page 54 looking at properties of magnitudes of vectors. And that's all we wrote, but we can denote the magnitude of a vector with like a double absolute value bars. And notice that the magnitude is always greater than 0. If it's not, if you should ever get a vector whose magnitude does indeed equal to 0, then you have found the 0 vector. So we denote it like this. So I call this the 0 vector. Big thing to remember is that if you have a vector and you find its magnitude, if you find the negative vector and you find its magnitude, remember what we said about that the negative just means that it's changing direction. So the magnitudes are actually equal to each other. If we have a vector that we multiply by a constant, some number, then we can also say that's the same thing as that constant times the magnitude of our vector. This is only on the condition that a is greater than 0. Otherwise, we're looking at negative directions and things like that. So we want to make sure that that's true. Also, if you have that the magnitude of a vector u, let's say, is equal to 1, what you have found is the unit vector. Then u vector is the unit vector. To make a unit vector, so you can get any vector that you have, but to make it a unit vector, what you need to do is get your vector and divide it by its magnitude. And when you do that, you get your unit vector. For w vector that equals 5, 5. Well, the first thing we need to do is go find the magnitude of w. Remember, we do that by squaring the first one, squaring the second one, and then getting the square root. So that's going to be the square root of 50, also the same thing as 5 square root of 2. So now we're ready. Notice that in order to find our unit vector is going to equal to our vector that we have, w vector, and then we're going to divide it by our magnitude, 5 square root of 2. So we're going to get our 5, 5 vector and divide everybody by 5 square root of 2. So our unit vector is going to be 5 over square root of 2, 5 over 5 square root of 2. Simplify that, we get 1 over the square root of 2, 1 over the square root of 2. And if we want to rationalize that, we're going to find that our u vector is equal to the square root of 2 over 2, the square root of 2 over 2. And this is what we call our unit vector. For vector notation, we can have our vector 4, 3, but we can also write it in terms of 4 I hat plus 3 j hat. So sometimes you'll see little hats like this. Sometimes they'll just say 4 in the I direction, and notice that's a vector, and 3 into the j direction. But both of them mean the exact same thing. So let's practice this guy. Let's find the unit vector in vector notation. So first we're going to do is go find our magnitude of our vector, and we can recognize that this is a 3, 4, 5 triangle, so our magnitude is going to be 5. For our unit vector, then we're going to get our 4 in the I direction and divide it by 5. We're going to get our 3 in the j direction and divide it by 5. And this would be our unit vector. So I'm going to write that down. Unit vector in a I hat direction plus b in the j hat direction. And that concludes this video.